Hello and welcome back to Getting Started with Laravel 4. In the previous video we set up a users table using migrations. Now in this lesson we'll have a look at different ways to fetch users from that table using Laravel's powerful query builder. Like always, it's plain impossible to cover every available tool in this particular Laravel class. If you feel you want to know more about it, the URL to the appropriate documentation is in the lesson notes. Feel free to check that out. Now in procedural PHP, you still find a lot of people hand-coding SQL queries, so they'll do stuff like this. Select star from users. Well, that's easy enough, but a lot of time you'll also have to code some pretty complicated queries like this. Well, the Laravel Query Builder handles all this for you. And the advantages? Well, for one, it's much more readable and clean. But more so, it does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, like creating prepared statements to guard against SQL injection attacks. And also, the Query Builder is database agnostic, and that means that you can switch out a MySQL database for a SQL Server database without having to change anything about your code, and that's pretty cool. Okay, let's get to work. Open the user controller that lives inside of app, controllers, usercontroller.php. Now remember that here we faked getting all users from the database. Let's do that for real now. Most query builder statements start with DB, and that's the Laravel DB class, and then the table, and that takes just one parameter, and that's the table name. So DB table users. And now we can call all kinds of methods on that class. For instance, get, and that will give us all the users. So let's just store that into a variable called users, and we're good to go. Okay, now remember the users table that we already created in the previous lesson. Now I already populated that with a couple of users. Okay, now what we're looking for to display is these users' email addresses. So let's do just that. Well, we are already sending those users to the view. So let's open up that view, user, index.blade.php. And this is a view we created before, and we're already showing that email. So if all is well, that should give us something. Now remember, the user controller is a resource controller, and that means that the index method will be available on the URL user. So let's just go ahead and hit that route. And here we are. Here are those email addresses that we wanted. Okay, now let's see what the query builder did behind the scenes. You can get all the executed queries by running db get query log. And let's just wrap that into a die and dump statement like so. And here is that query, select star from users. Very simple. Okay, now what if we wanted to get a single user, for instance, in the show method? Well, here we could do user equals db table. And then don't forget to pass in that it's about the users table. And then we can simply say where, and we'll have a look at the column ID. And let's just grab the user with an ID of 1. Or better yet, let's just grab the user with an ID of ID. Now remember the resource for routing. This will be available on user/1, user/2, user/3, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's check that out. Well, here we're getting a default value. Let's see what's going on here. Well, we are looking at user email, so apparently this is not set. And why is that? Well, we're trying to display a single user's email here, but our query still returns an array of users. Now to fix that, you can do one of the following. You can either tell the query builder to only fetch the first row that it comes across. And now that returns a single user rather than an array of users, so that we can reference that email address here. And what you can also do is just get rid of this altogether and instead do find and then pass in the ID. So here we go. We have Joost van Veen and jdo@tutsplus.com and john@do.com. So now what if we want to get a user by his email address? Well, here we can use our where statement again. And here we can just do where email equals john@do.com. And that will give us the right user. So can we do multiple where statements? Well, of course. And there's two ways that you can do this. You can either keep adding where statements, where ID is, 5. Or you can just use a single where statement and pass in an array. And we need to convert this. And then we'll just add the ID to the array as well, just like so, and make sure to clean this up. So let's just see what that does behind the scenes. We'll do get query log again. And here you see that behind the scenes, Laravel has created the proper query using prepared statements. And sure enough, that query gives us John Doe. Well, similarly, if we want to do an or where statement, let's do that in our index method, we can just add that to any query as well. Maybe we would like to do a where first. So where ID is equal to 1. And then we could have that followed by an or where ID equals 5. And now that should give us 2 users. Yep, there you go. Okay, and I'll leave all the old queries in here for you, so you have some reference. Now, sometimes you just want to count how many users there are in a table. Well, all you need to do is db table users again, and then just add count. And that will give you the amount of users in that table. You see, there's 3 users there. Now, other times you may want to have a key value pair array of users. And let's see if we can make that happen. We'll use a lists method. And the first parameter will be the value field. And the second parameter will be the key field for which we'll use the user's ID. Similarly, you could do more advanced statements, such as getting the maximum permission. We'll just use the max method for that and just pass in permission as the field name. And here we see that the maximum permission is 1. Okay, we'll construct just one final query. I'll just comment all this out. And this will be an accumulation of a lot of available methods here. So we'll do users equals db table users. And then we'll just add a where statement. And we're looking for any user where ID is greater than 1. And then we'll just throw in an order statement, order by. And maybe we'll just order by email in a descending manner. And then I want to limit the results to 2 records. And I want the limit offset to be at, well, 0. And then, of course, we have to finish off with get to actually execute the statement. Like we expected, we still get these 2 users. Now let's see what kind of query Laravel has created for us. We'll just die and dump the query log again. And here it is. So again, the query builder features loads of methods. There's order by, group by, having, get, where in, where not in, where not between, where between, or where null. And you can even use raw expressions. So Joost, can you do joins with the query builder? I hear you think. Well, of course you can. Let's set up a migration for a second table. Just fire up the terminal first and cd into your site root, like so. And then we'll do php artisan migrate make to create a new migration. We'll call that migration create posts table. And then, of course, in an extra create tag, we want to specify the table name. Okay, let's run that command and open up that migration. And this is the table that we're going to create. And all we need now is a field for title, and that will be of the type string. And of course, we want to create a body field as well, and let's make that of the type text. And we'll just leave the timestamps in for now, that's always handy. And then we'll need a foreign key field that actually links our posts to the users table. And the Laravel convention is that this would be an integer with a name of user underscore ID, so that's the foreign table but in singular form, followed by an underscore, followed by the name of the foreign key. And then we have to make sure that that field is unsigned, so it's a positive integer. So back to the terminal and let's see if we can run this migration. Do you remember? php artisan migrate. Now let's just check. And yes, that has indeed created a posts table with the fields that we specified. Now you just sit tight. I'll just populate this table through the magic of screencast. Okay, welcome back. Now as you can see, we have 2 posts for user 1 and a single post for user 2. Okay, let's create that join. Let me just comment this out again. Now, like always, let's start with db table users. And then we need to tell the query builder that we need to make a join. And finally, we'll execute the query. So for the join, we want to specify the table that we need to join to. And then, of course, we need to specify what we want to join on. Well, we want to join on the users table, more specifically so the ID of the users table. And that should be equal to the user ID inside of the post table. Right, and let's store the result in a users variable again. Okay, now let's get rid of this query log here and adjust our view file. What I would like to do is display the title for every blog post and then followed by the user email. So we'll just do user email. And then it might be nice to wrap the title in strong tags. And I think that's it. And sure enough, when we view this in the browser, we have all the post titles accompanied by their author's email. Okay, so that's joins, but can we do insert statements as well? Well, let's find out. Well, doing an insert statement is as simple as just defining an array of data. I'll just store that in a variable called data, so that will be equal to an array. Well, in this case, we'll just insert a new user, so we need to specify an email as well as a password. Okay, so I'll just specify that email And here I'll just create a new hash using Laravel's hash class. And I'll just use a very weak password here. Now remember, we also have a permission field, but I won't set it so that it'll just fall back to its default value. And then we'll just call Laravel's query builder, make sure we specify the table users, and run the method insert. And all we have to do is provide that method with the data array that we just created. Okay, now let's run our user route in the browser just to execute that statement, and then check in SQL Pro to see if that's actually created a new user. So we need to select the users table here, and sure enough, there's our new user right here. So can we do updates as well? Well, of course we can. I'll just copy this line here. Now the first thing that we need to do is add a where statement. Let's just update our new user, which has an ID of 6. And then instead of insert, we'll just call update and pass in the data. Now we do want to be able to check if we actually changed anything, so let's do sum 11 here. And then try and update our user by running that user route. So I'll reload. We're getting a duplicate entry here because we're probably trying to save the same email address twice. Let's see what's going on. Oh yeah, and that's because we have the insert statement here and then the update statement. So let's just quickly comment this out and then remove that new user like so. Right, so now we're all back to normal and try and run it again. And this time the error is gone and we can check the results by reloading this. And now we've actually changed the email address for this user. And that was selecting, inserting and updating. And that just leaves us with deleting. Let's try and do that now. Okay, now what we want to do is call the query builder again and make sure we have a constraint. And just to tell the query that the delete method is only going to affect the user with an ID of 6. And once we've set that constraint, we can just easily do delete. And now when we hit that route and then check in the database, sure enough our user with an ID of 6 has disappeared. Now while in the query builder you use loads of expressions to really define and fine-tune your queries, Laravel also has an ORM called Eloquent. And that requires hardly any coding at all. And we'll have a look at that in the next video. I'll see you there.